Winter is such a fun season. It brings snow, cookies and lots of... No, it's not. It's cold, wet and dark. You get sick all the time and there are not many activities you can do. In fact, I caught a fever again just a few days ago, which was especially frustrating since on the very same day Google Play rejected the release of my first mobile game at the last second. Feeling a bit upset and in need of a distraction, I decided to join the cozy winter game jam to clear my mind and focus on something creative. Yeah, despite my dislike for winter, here I was signing up for a winter-themed game jam. If you're not familiar with game jams, they are competitions where participants create a game from scratch within a limited time. Once the deadline is up, everyone can rate the games and the top-rated project wins the jam. The cozy winter jam had a fitting topic. Participants had to make a winter-themed game within just 3 days or 72 hours. Normally I am super excited to join game jams like this, but this time was different. Since I was sick and also had to study for several exams, my time and energy were really limited. Still, I decided to participate because the jam description emphasized that it didn't require a huge commitment. Plus, let's be honest, I needed some fresh content. For some reason, the jam started at 10 PM, so all I could do at first was brainstorm ideas. Eventually, I came up with the concept for a fast-paced skiing game. The idea was that the player would race down a long mountain, dodging obstacles. As time went on, they would get faster and the slope would get steeper, increasing the difficulty the longer they survived. Feeling good about the idea, I went to bed. The next morning I kicked things off by creating a basic skier using pixel art. This is the final design for the skier, and once I was done with the player character, I moved on to coding a simple level generation system. I created 6 basic stages, each with a different slope. As the player approaches a new stage, the next one spawns in. I made sure each new slope was similar to the previous one, or at least not too different, so that the transition between stages would feel smooth and continuous, giving the effect of a long, uninterrupted slope to ski down. Next up, I needed to figure out how to make the player move, and honestly I had no idea where to start. But in the end it turned out to be surprisingly simple. I applied physics to the player and removed all friction, then just gave him a little push off the edge and off he went. At this point you couldn't control him and he quickly sped up way too fast, but it was pretty fun to watch him race down the slope. After a while he even started jumping higher and higher. Look at him go. Yeah, I think at this point he is never coming back down. You know what else isn't coming back down? Your learning curve after you start using Brilliant. You will see what I mean once you get into their fun and engaging courses featuring thousands of interactive lessons that teach you math, data analysis, programming and AI. Brilliant's implementation of the first principles approach makes them uniquely effective compared to other learning platforms. Each lesson is designed by trusted award-winning researchers and teachers and allows you to apply hands-on problem solving so you can experiment with concepts and be creative. This method helps you build understanding from the ground up, no matter your starting point. In fact, it has been proven to be 6 times more effective than watching traditional lecture videos. When learning with Brilliant, you will also develop better critical thinking skills because of all the problem solving you are doing instead of just memorizing facts. You will spend your time building real knowledge while also becoming a better thinker. If you want to get into programming and maybe even game development, you should check out their programming courses. You will learn essential coding elements like loops, variables, nesting and conditionals, as well as become familiar with the popular programming language Python, all through fun and interactive learning. You will be able to start making your own complex programs and even games in no time. If I caught your interest and you want to try everything Brilliant offers for free for 30 days, as well as get a 20% discount off an annual premium subscription, visit brilliant.org/flukydev. You can find the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. Make sure to check it out because sponsorships like this really motivate me to keep making videos. Anyway, I decided to add some basic controls to give the player more control over the skier's speed. When you hold down the right arrow key, the friction is set to 0, allowing the skier to pick up speed quickly. If you press the left arrow key, the friction increases to 1.5, causing the skier to slow down. If you don't press anything, the friction is set to 0.1, which causes the skier to speed up very slowly. It took me a while to fine-tune these values and I might tweak them later, but for now they work well. Since these controls are physics-based, they don't feel super responsive but more realistic and lively. At this point the character still looked pretty stiff and lifeless, so it was time to animate him. I will be honest, it took me a while to make everything look right. This one looks like a grandma hanging onto a ski pole, or like me trying to ski. Anyway, I made some small tweaks to the sprites and now we had a decent base for the game mechanics. Unfortunately, the gameplay starts to feel a bit dull when all you can do is speed up or slow down, so it was time to add more movement. I added the ability to hold the up arrow key to charge a jump bar. Once the bar turns blue, you can release the key and the player will jump. The more the bar is filled, the higher the jump, but you can only jump when you are on the ground. I quickly drew some rock sprites to use as obstacles later, but then I called it a night since it was already really late. I quickly set up a simple obstacle spawning system. Now, each stage has 2 potential spawn points for obstacles. There are 10 different rock variations and each spawn point has a 12% chance of spawning a rock. I think you can start to see where the game is heading. Check me out, dodging those obstacles like a pro skier. Oops. But what happens if you get stuck on an obstacle like that? You can't jump over it because you are too slow. I came up with a super simple fix for this. Now, when you touch an obstacle, it gets destroyed. While the rocks still slow you down, you can keep going after hitting one. However, to make that slow down feel more like a real punishment, I decided to add a giant avalanche chasing the player. At first, the avalanche was super slow and easy to avoid, so I made it faster after this test play. But then I ran into a much bigger issue. Avoiding the rocks wasn't fun at all. It felt frustrating and sometimes the rocks would appear way too fast for you to react. In short, I realized I needed to make a lot of changes if I wanted the game to actually be fun. I spent a lot of time tweaking the jump mechanic, adjusting the player movement and refining the camera position so players could see the obstacles coming sooner. After all that, the game was already a lot more enjoyable to play. Right now players can crash into rocks while barely slowing down, so I wanted to add a mechanic where they fall if they hit an obstacle too fast. This will force players to control their speed if they want a high score. But before I tackle that, I need to fix the avalanche since the player still outruns it every time. It still wasn't enough to create a real challenge for the player and it was way too easy to outrun. So I scrapped the avalanche idea and focused on improving the game's overall appearance before adding any new features. Because let's be honest, the game still looked pretty terrible. I added extra layers to the levels to give the slope a more three-dimensional feel. Then I added a bunch of environmental objects like different types of trees and rocks, which now spawn randomly around the player. I thought this would improve the look, but honestly it made things worse. There was just too much going on and it became hard to distinguish the actual obstacles in front of you. On top of that, the rendering was glitchy and everything looked cheap and buggy. I fixed the rendering issues, but I also removed all the environmental objects except for the trees. Now there's less variety around the player, but it's much easier to spot the obstacles again. At the end of day 2 I got distracted on YouTube and ended up sleeping for almost 14 hours. But like I mentioned before, I wasn't planning to go all in on this gem, so it's not a huge deal. Anyway, let's put in some final touches to make the game at least decent enough to enjoy once the gem is over. I added some waypoints that spawn along the path occasionally, which act as obstacles. I also bumped up the obstacle spawn rate and tested the game for a bit. I didn't find any bugs, but the jumping felt a little stiff, so I decided to add new animations to smooth it out. I also added some simple particle effects that appear when the player is moving or when an obstacle breaks. Speaking of breaking obstacles, I made it so the player explodes if they hit an obstacle too fast, giving the game a bit more challenge. Just before the game jam ended, I added a text display showing the player's travel distance and current speed in 2 different units of measurement. I also created a simple main menu where the player's best distance and top speeds are shown. And just like that, the game was done. It was simple but still really fun to play. I don't think my game even got a good final rating, but I don't care because I was in for the fun. If you would like to give the game a try, you can download it from the link in the description below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to drop some feedback in the comments. Have a great day and I will see you next time.